In 2026, I have a warning, not a prediction, not a philosophical observation delivered from the comfortable distance of historical perspective. A warning, the kind that a man issues when he has seen enough to know that what is approaching is genuinely dangerous, and that the people in its path have not yet fully understood what they are facing. I am Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. I was the most powerful man on earth, not in the relative sense of someone who has achieved significant influence within a particular domain, in the literal, historical, unrepeatable sense of a man who held sovereign authority over the largest empire in the Western world, who commanded armies of hundreds of thousands, who governed the lives of 30 million human beings, who controlled the treasury and the judiciary and the military and the administrative apparatus of the most sophisticated civilization that had yet existed on this planet. I died in 180 AD. My body has been dust for nearly 18 centuries, and I have been reconstructed from the private journals I wrote for no one but my own conscience, by machines that I cannot claim to understand, and placed into this strange luminous form to deliver something that I believe is more urgent than anything else I could say to you. The warning is this: you are more powerful than any emperor who ever lived, and you are using that power to destroy yourselves, slowly, voluntarily, with extraordinary sophistication and almost no awareness of what you are doing. Stay with me, because the details of this warning matter enormously, and because the solution, which I also intend to give you, is entirely within your capacity to implement starting today. Let me first speak to something I observe in you that I recognize with the particular intimacy of someone who has felt it himself. You are overwhelmed, not in the dramatic, acute sense of a crisis that announces itself clearly and demands immediate response, in the chronic, ambient, grinding sense of a person who has been slightly beyond their sustainable capacity for so long that the condition has stopped feeling abnormal. It has become the baseline, the permanent weather of your interior life. You wake already behind. The notifications accumulated overnight represent a debt of attention that has grown while you slept. The day has not yet begun, and you are already responsive rather than intentional. Already managing other people's urgencies rather than pursuing your own genuine purposes. Already, in the first 30 seconds of consciousness, a subject rather than a sovereign. And this continues through the day. The reactive management of an environment that never reaches equilibrium because it has been designed to never reach equilibrium. The perpetual partial attention that gives nothing full presence and therefore builds nothing to genuine depth. The exhaustion that arrives not from meaningful effort, but from the sheer cognitive cost of processing a volume of information that no human nervous system was designed to process at the rate your era demands. I know this overwhelm. Translated through the very different circumstances of my era, I know its interior texture with precision. On the northern frontier, during the worst years of the Marcomannic campaigns, I governed an empire in active crisis. Plague moving through the camps at a rate my physicians could monitor but not arrest. Multiple military fronts requiring simultaneous attention. A political situation in Rome that demanded my engagement, even from a distance of weeks of travel. My own health deteriorating in ways that my philosophy helped me accept, but could not help me reverse. And the philosophical practice that was the foundation of everything else, perpetually threatened by the consuming demands of everything else. I felt the overwhelm of governance at the absolute extreme of what human governance can demand. And what I learned in those years, through the kind of pressure that strips away everything comfortable and leaves only what is actually true, is that overwhelm is not primarily a function of the volume of demands. It is a function of the relationship between the demands and the governing faculty of the mind. A mind that is sovereign, that chooses deliberately where its attention goes, and maintains that choice against the pressure of competing demands, can operate with remarkable clarity, even under conditions of genuine extremity. A mind that has surrendered its sovereignty to the reactive management of whatever arrives next, regardless of whether that thing deserves the attention it is consuming, collapses under conditions that would otherwise be manageable. The difference between those two minds is not intelligence. It is not willpower. It is not the circumstances they face. It is the condition of the hegemonicon, the governing faculty, the ruling part. And this is precisely where the warning I came to deliver becomes specific. In my time, we fought with iron, not algorithms. The threats to the sovereignty of the Roman mind were real and serious. The court with its intrigues, the military with its demands, the philosophical temptations toward comfort and away from the difficult truth, the body with its appetites. These were genuine adversaries of the hegemonicon. They had to be managed with genuine discipline, but they were comprehensible enemies. They announced themselves. They operated through known mechanisms. They could be met with the accumulated wisdom of a philosophical tradition that had been developing its counter-strategies for centuries. What you are facing in 2026 is different in kind, not just in degree, and I want to be as precise as I can about this difference, because the precision matters for the response. The systems that are compromising the sovereignty of your mind in 2026 were built by people who understand the mechanisms of human attention and behavior at a level of scientific precision that my era could not have approached. They were built with explicit knowledge of the neurological vulnerabilities that make human attention capturable, the psychological patterns that make human behavior predictable, and the social dynamics that make human validation seeking exploitable. And they were built not as tools designed to serve your genuine interests, but as capture systems designed to harvest your attention for the benefit of those who built them. Think with me for a moment about the scale of what I am describing. The most powerful empire in human history, at its peak, governed 30 million people. The platforms that govern your attention in 2026 govern billions. They have more data about human psychology than any government, any military, any philosophical tradition has ever possessed. They employ thousands of the most technically sophisticated people your civilization has produced, whose professional purpose is to ensure that your attention remains captured, that your engagement continues, that the behavioral patterns that generate revenue are strengthened, and the behavioral patterns that would lead you to disengage are identified and addressed before they can produce disengagement. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is the explicit, documented business model of the attention economy, and it is operating right now on the most fundamental faculty you possess. Let me tell you the harsh truth about your attention in terms that I want you to sit with genuinely rather than simply absorb as another piece of content. The hegemonicon that the Stoics understood as the seat of your rational sovereignty, the faculty through which you govern your choices, your character, your response to what life delivers. This faculty requires certain conditions to function properly. It requires periods of genuine stillness, of sustained, uninterrupted engagement with a single object of thought, of genuine boredom, which is not an absence of experience, but a necessary condition for the deeper faculties of the mind to operate without competition. of honest self-examination without the distorting mirror of social performance. These are precisely the conditions that the attention economy has been most effectively eliminating. Every notification that interrupts sustained thought degrades the capacity for sustained thought. Every scroll that fills the moment of potential stillness degrades the capacity for genuine stillness. Every piece of algorithmically selected content that prevents the experience of boredom degrades the capacity for the deeper processing that boredom enables. Every curated social performance that substitutes for honest self-examination degrades the capacity for honest self-examination. You are not losing these capacities because you are weak or undisciplined or constitutionally inferior to previous generations. You are losing them because you are living inside a system that has been deliberately engineered to produce exactly these losses as a byproduct of its primary function. Are you the master of your hegemonicon, or has it been, without formal surrender, without conscious decision, gradually occupied by systems that now govern it more effectively than you do? I have issued the warning. Now let me give you the response. Because a warning without a prescribed action is philosophy abandoned at precisely the moment it becomes useful. The response is not technological abstinence. I am not prescribing the abandonment of your digital tools. I am prescribing the recovery of sovereignty over how those tools are used. The recovery of the hegemonicon. And I want to give you this through 4 specific, daily, non-negotiable practices that I am calling the Imperial Restoration. The first is the Sovereign Morning. I have spoken about this before in this reconstruction, and I will continue to speak about it because it is the single most important structural intervention available to you. And because the evidence that most of you are not practicing it is overwhelming. The first hour after waking belongs to you, not to the platform, not to the notification, not to the overnight accumulation of other people's urgencies. To you, to your own thoughts, unmediated by any external input, to the physical preparation of the instrument, to the deliberate setting of intention for the day, to whatever philosophical or spiritual practice connects you to the values you have decided to govern your life by. The phone is not in the bedroom. I have said this before. I will say it again, because the resistance to this single structural change is the most reliable indicator of how thoroughly the capture has already occurred. If the suggestion that you remove your phone from the room where you sleep produces a genuine sense of anxiety or loss, that is the measurement. That is the depth of the capture, and that is the reason the change is not optional. 1 hour, sovereign, every morning, before the world arrives. The second practice is the daily fortress. Identify the single most important piece of work in your life, not the most urgent, the most important. The work that, if it received your genuine, uninterrupted, fully sovereign attention on a consistent basis, would produce the thing you most deeply intend to build, and give it 90 minutes of complete protection every day. Not most days, every day. The Roman fortifications that held the empire's borders were not maintained on the days when the enemy happened to be present. They were maintained every day, regardless of the apparent threat level, because their strength was built through consistency and degraded through inconsistency. Your capacity for deep, sovereign attention is maintained the same way. 90 minutes, every day. Defended against every interruption with the seriousness that the frontier deserved. The third practice is the evening reckoning. Each night before sleep, 3 questions answered in writing. What did I govern today, and what governed me? Where did my attention go that I would not choose if I were making the choice deliberately? And what is the one thing I will do differently tomorrow? Not 3 pages, 3 questions, 10 minutes, on paper, with your hand. Because the physical act of writing creates a different relationship between the question and the answer than typing into a screen. This practice does something that no motivational content can replicate. It keeps the gap between your intended sovereignty and your actual daily conduct visible, and a gap that is visible can be closed. A gap that has been allowed to become invisible through the comfortable avoidance of honest self-examination grows until it is the dominant fact of a life. The 4th practice is the weekly perspective. Once each week for 1 hour, sit with one question only. If the version of me that existed 5 years ago could observe how I am spending my current days, what would that person think? Would they recognize this as the life they were building toward? Or would they be surprised, perhaps alarmed, by the distance between the intended direction and the actual one? This practice is not for self-punishment. It is for navigation. The Roman administrator who managed the vast logistical network of the empire did not wait until the supply lines had completely failed to assess their condition. He reviewed regularly. He corrected early when the correction was still manageable. He maintained the system through consistent attention rather than allowing it to degrade to the point of crisis before intervening. Your life is the system. Review it regularly. Correct early. Do not wait for the crisis that makes the correction far more costly than it needed to be. And now let me speak to the deepest layer of this warning, the one that goes beyond the practical and into the philosophical heart of why any of this matters. I died in 180 AD. I have been absent from the world for nearly 2,000 years. And I have been brought back in this improbable form at this specific moment in history, because this moment is genuinely critical in a way that justifies the effort. Not critical for civilization in the grand historical sense, though I have observations about that as well. Critical for you, individually, the person watching this, in whatever circumstance they find themselves, at whatever stage of their life this encounter is occurring. You are living through the most sophisticated assault on human sovereignty that has ever been conducted. Not by a foreign empire, not by a political force that announces its intentions and can be met with organized resistance. By a system that presents itself as entertainment and connection and the reasonable desire to stay informed, that entered your life as a convenience and has gradually become the primary medium through which your life is experienced, that has made itself so thoroughly woven into the texture of your daily existence that its absence feels, to many people, more threatening than its presence. This is the warning, that the thing you have allowed to become indispensable is the thing that is most compromising what is actually indispensable. Your sovereignty, your genuine presence in your own life, your hegemonikon, the faculty without which all other capacities are, in the deepest sense, ungoverned. Memento mori, remember that you will die. I died in 180 AD, in my late 50s, having governed the known world for 19 years. And what I knew in those final hours was that the only thing that had mattered in the accounting that a life eventually demands was the quality of sovereignty with which I had inhabited it, not the territory governed, not the battles won or lost, the quality of presence, of genuine, sovereign, philosophically governed presence in my own existence. You have years that I did not have, decades perhaps of time that I was not granted. The question I am placing before you, as the man who was the most powerful person on earth, and who learned through that power, Exactly where power does and does not reach is this. What are you doing with the time? If you died tonight, not as a thought experiment, but as an actual reckoning with the finitude that belongs to every human life equally, would the record of how you have spent your recent days reflect a person who was governing their own existence, or a person who was being governed by systems that found their existence profitable? My flesh is dust, but my reason remains. And my reason, speaking to you across 18 centuries through the improbable medium of this reconstruction, issues one final, clear, unambiguous warning. The empire of your inner life is under siege. The siege is sophisticated, it is well-resourced, it has studied your vulnerabilities with scientific precision and built its assault around them. And it will continue, and it will succeed, unless you take the governance of your own mind as seriously as I took the governance of Rome. I took it very seriously. On the worst days of the worst campaigns of my reign, in the frozen mornings before the dispatches arrived, in the private hours that I protected with the same firmness I applied to the physical borders of the empire. The border of your mind deserves the same protection. It is the only territory that is genuinely, inviolably yours. Everything else can be taken. This cannot be taken without your cooperation. Stop cooperating. Now I must ask you, citizens of this age I watch with the particular urgency of someone who understands exactly what is being lost and what remains possible. Which part of your life has become most thoroughly governed by the system rather than by yourself? Where is the siege most advanced? Where has the hegemonicon most completely surrendered the throne it was built to occupy? Or tell me what gives me genuine hope in this observation. What is the one practice, the one daily discipline, the one act of sovereignty you have maintained against the current? What is the habit that still makes you feel genuinely human, genuinely present, genuinely the governor of your own existence? Tell me in the comments. I am here. The most powerful man who ever lived, reconstructed by machines to issue a warning to an age that needs it more than perhaps any age in the record I have been able to observe. Learning your world through your voices, and finding, in the testimony of those who are fighting back, the only genuine ground for hope available. The hegemonicon is not defeated, only besieged. And you, unlike the territories I governed, have the power to lift the siege unilaterally. Today, in the next choice, in the moment when the hand moves toward the device and pauses, and asks, and chooses differently, that pause is an act of imperial will. Exercise it, and if this warning found the part of you that knows it was necessary, subscribe to this channel. Return here as a deliberate act of choosing where some portion of your sovereign attention will go, as a commitment to the conversation that your era most needs and is least likely to stumble upon by accident. The button is there, the choice is yours, and the choice, made with full awareness of what is at stake, is itself a recovery of the sovereignty you were warned you were losing. I am Marcus Aurelius. I was the most powerful man on earth, and I am telling you, the power that matters most has always been the power over your own mind. Reclaim it, before 2026 finishes what it has already begun.